I'm on mute for the next minute. We're not starting for another minute. So I am going to mute myself once again.
Hey, Sultan.
Hello, Samia. Could you remove the yeah, wonderful. طيب, surprise, like a rock star entrance. Bismillah alayki. Okay, so we're about to begin in a few seconds. It's 7 p.m. here in the UAE, 11 a.m. I believe in New York. And I think we can start. We'll have more people join us. We're at 102 participants now, and I expect a few more people to be joining us. Samia, just letting you know that everybody else is on mute except you and I. And I might unmute a couple of people here and there to hear from them. So I suppose we can begin. Thank you everybody for joining the second edition of the online cultural Majlis. I'm very honored and very pleased to be hosting one of the greatest artists on this planet. She happens to be a Palestinian, she happens to be an Arab, she happens to be a woman, she happens to live in New York, but she is one of the greatest artists, at least in my eyes, and many people, and all of you who have shown up, I'm sure, admire her work, as do I. So I'll give you a little bit of how the next hour will pan out. I'll be doing a quick Q&A with Samia for 5 minutes, even less. And then Samia is going to share her screen and take us over about 12 works, some of which are oil on canvas, but she will also be showing us her digital kinetic work that she's been doing on the computer for over 30 years now. And then we'll come back and we will start taking questions from all of you. So you have the chat on the side of the screen and you can add your questions there, and I will go back and I will make sure to pick questions. And another thing is, please make sure you add your affiliation so I know who's asking the question. It will make things easier to introduce you to Samia. And also the chat will be saved, and I will send Samia a copy of the chat so that she could follow up. And in case any of you have suggestions or questions that we didn't have time for her to answer here, she will have your name and your affiliation. So basically, we'll be able to find you. So you will be able to share your question with others as well. So Samia, can I begin?
Yes.
طيب, hello. So a brief introduction. Samia Halaby is a Jerusalem, Palestine-born artist, scholar, and art historian known for her abstract works, but also known for her political activism through her work. Her abstractions are often inspired by nature, in particular landscape, texture, and certainly the native trees of Palestine. Samia, who lives in New York, was raised in Jaffa until her family immigrated to Lebanon after the occupation of Palestine in 1948. In 1951, Samia moved to the US, first to Ohio, then Indiana, where she earned a Master's of Fine Arts from Indiana University, and then studied at the Yale School of Art between 1972 and 1982, where she also taught as an associate professor. So Samia will be sharing with us some of her work, which is in many cases collected by some of the greatest museums in the US and in Europe. Here in the Middle East, she's in the collections of the Jordan National Gallery, the Dallul collection, Mazen Qubti's collection. He's with us here on the chat. But also in the West, she's in the Guggenheim collection, both Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, but also Guggenheim New York. and so many other museums, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Detroit Institute of Art. Really, the list goes on and on. Her alma mater collects her work, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll be going over some of these questions later. I will spotlight your video. The first question I'd like to ask you, Samia, is how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. You look good and well, so.
Samia, tell us how you are in light of the current events. How are you keeping yourself healthy? How are you making sure that you're staying safe in this environment in the US?
I started isolating myself a little, maybe just exactly on time, and pushed into it a little to become a little more conscious of it by my grandniece, Medicine, who insisted I stay, who scared me properly, and who went shopping for food for me and still won't let me out of the house, except that she's in Brooklyn, I'm in Manhattan, and I have gone out a little bit, but I haven't entered stores. But I've been intelligent about how I went out. And you might be wondering, Sultan, what it's like in New York, because I'm guessing, first of all, I am so impressed by the number of people who keep calling each other. I certainly received many calls and communications. People are concerned about each other, and they ask, and they wonder if you need anything. And also in this, what you receive in the news are statistics and dysfunctional leadership with their pronouncements, to say the least. But the streets of New York people are polite. At night, you know, what I experience of impoliteness or nastiness is late at night, on rare occasion, I've heard cars zooming insanely up and down the highway, the streets of New York and Manhattan, which are not highways, but they sound like they're making loud noises almost on purpose. But the streets, when you walk the streets, people are polite. They make room. They see me coming with my white hair. They especially distance themselves. So what I see on the street, because I threw my TV away and abandoned the mass media, what I see on the street are good people. So that's what it's like in New York.
Okay, well, we're very glad that you are keeping safe and healthy. And thanks to Madison in Brooklyn, who's also joining us here on the chat. Samia, I think without further ado, maybe we can start with the presentation and then we can come back to the questions of the audience. So would you please share your screen with us, Samia?
Oops. Yep. Okay, that's the first slide. Okay. So do you want me to start? Shall I start?
Yes, please walk us through the slides and why you chose these works.
Okay, I started with one of the most recent substantial works that I've done. This is quite large. You'll see the measurements at the bottom. I was trying to, it's titled Simultaneous Depth. I was trying to make a space where you saw front, back, middle simultaneously. But, you know, the ideas that go through one's head are numerous. I'm not going to go through them now, but you can see that I'm very interested in geometry in this piece and basically in my work. And I followed your insights and tried to explain how I moved from oil painting. So here I showed you a painting that is now, I'm moving back now a little more, nearly 60 years back. Actually, it is 60 years back. I'm moving to 1959 when I graduated from undergraduate school in Cincinnati and moved to Michigan State University in East Lansing and was studying painting. And this is my studio as a graduate student, my very first month at school. And this is a painting that comes from that period. It dates from the 1960. It's an oil painting. It reminds me a great deal of Jumana Hosseini's work. And even though I didn't know her, and this may predate some of her work, doing the cities, but it tells you something of the Arab world and Palestine in my heart, deep into my intuitions, regardless of where I am and what I'm painting. And I titled it The City, but maybe it's Jerusalem in its own kind of way. An oil painting, 9 years later, I had started doing a series that's abstract in its overall.
Okay, I found this on the web first, that abstract.
We silenced my phone, but Siri seems to insist, so I'm going to shut down the phone.
Samia, can everyone see Samia's screen, by the way? Thumbs up if you can see Samia's screen. Great. Okay. Tfaddali.
So, and now I'm doing oil painting of my, in a very geometric manner, very concerned about the picture plane, but then this is oil on canvas. And by about the mid-80s, this is about 20 years after the previous slide, I had begun using, had spent some time in Hawaii and was forced to use acrylic because there was a show and paintings had to dry. And I started asking questions about what is the picture plane, what are the surfaces mankind has painted on, and all my questions ever since the beginning of my education have been towards looking for art history to see what are the things that have been done and how I can add to them and be part of the continuum of culture. The previous one, let me just jump back to it again. The previous one was asking what is a window if it's a very long stretch, like a scroll. And this one is about 26 feet, about 9 meters, as you can see from this, the centimeter size I have, 891 centimeters wide. So it can't be seen as a window. It's almost like a scroll. You have to walk past it. And then I started asking, okay, let's get rid of the window. Let's get rid of the rectangle. What is a rectangle? And this is when I was teaching at the University of Hawaii and was putting canvas on the wall, stapling it, painting on it, and painting on the wall. And for the past 15 years in my life, I had had a flirtation with not only history, but also the computer and programming the computer. And the flirtation came in many ways. So I'm also in my research in art history realized that the most important things I've seen and respect are those that use the technology of their times. So I thought, okay, if Leonardo dissected a cadaver in the 15th century, why am I so scared? So I jumped in and started programming. And the first computer I bought was an Amiga 2000. I'd gone to I had been shopping and saw an Amiga advertisement running on the Amiga. And it had so many colors and was so beautiful. And the PC could only do 4 colors at the time. And I thought I was shopping and I know much and the salespeople knew less. And so I just ran into this shop in the financial district in New York. And the Amiga was just, poor thing, was just not beloved by the financial people. So they had what they called a blowout sale. And I got the Amiga and all of it, you know, the whole kit and caboodle for $1,000. And I went home, I was so happy. And I had done a little programming on my sister's Apple II in 1984. And I used Logo then, which I was told was a language made for children. And it was so much fun. So when I got the Amiga, I just started programming with Amiga Basic. And I can't tell you how absorbed. I got into it. It took every part of my life, every day for 3 or 4 years.
This, Samia, that you bought the computer?
It was the early 1986, which is early for much of computer art, but I've been aware of the computer and things done for the computer at least 15 years earlier. So I'm in a way sad that I hadn't explored it earlier. But so when I came to the Amiga or to the computer, I wanted to explore what the medium can do. I could see that there were programs that made the computer pretend to be a pencil drawing on a paper or an oil painting or anything. So I thought it's not the programmer who should interpret the media for me. I should interpret the media. And so I started programming, and I have to tell you, I feel programming, I still do, is a very beautiful language. I love using it because it imitates, it's part of us. It imitates how a city works. It imitates so much that is in our life. The moving from part to part in the program, what a function does is just like the functions in our life, and so on. But I will quit my poetic description of how much I love on the computer, and I started programming on this Amiga, and the thing about the Amiga that was, to me, I'm going to have you listen to this one first, and then I'll talk. But I'm going to be silent while you see this piece. Well, I have to tell you two things. When I was doing this in the 86, 87, and I'd invite friends and we'd sit and watch together, we would just giggle. You know, they were very funny programs to me and to them. And it wasn't like, oh, this is funny like a joke, but it was funny like something delightful. Here's this machine, and I push a button, and it runs for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, and it's doing this. And there, you know, the sound is not very elegant. It's not music. It's not music. And these are imitating what we experience in the world. We move, we see things in motion, we look here, there, and everywhere, and we hear sounds behind us that we don't see anything connected to them, and we see things way in front of us that don't have sound because they're too far away. So this is about seeing the world in an abstract way, but it's just as true as any film recording of the world. And so the delight of seeing this and the surprise of having the computer do it was something to me very special. And I always felt this is a very short clip. These are short clips. They're not the entire piece. And one of the things I feel even now is that in some ways, these are some of the more profound things I've done in my life in painting, because it's combining sound and motion and image in an abstract way. If you think about it, motion and abstraction is not something we see very well. We never see it unless it is programmed on the computer. We see things that have a lens in them. So one of the things I rejected was, as I'm learning how to program, was for things to turn around as though you are moving them in front of you, twirling them three-dimensionally. I wanted to maintain the abstraction. These date from 1986, 87. These are some of the first things I've done. This one's called Tide. Oh, I'm sorry, this one's called Bird Dog. I missed showing you time. Let's see if I go back to it. And the next one is called Bird Dog. Because, you know, if you're hunting and you have a dog and he goes to get the bird after, poor bird, after you shoot it. Whoops, sorry, I goofed again.
Samia, before you proceed, can you tell us a little bit about the sound element? Is it part of the artwork, and where do you get the sound from?
Okay, the sound is programmed. This is programmed sound. Later on, I change, but the sound, when I talk about the sound and the image in one function or in one loop, I have a command that tells the sound to change in timbre and change in level at the same time that I'm telling it to do a rectangle or a line to go from here to there. So sometimes I'm using this same number. The function says from 1 to 200 repeats, change the sound and change the image and change the color. So all of it is knitted in. And so it's not planned as music, it's planned as signals, noises you see in the street. You know, a car beeps, a train shoots past you, and so on. It's not planned as a bass rhythm with melodic over it. I know little about music, but so then I could see that people were performing music, digital music, and at the conferences I went to, and they were irtijal, they were just working together impromptu without pre-planning. So I thought what fun it would be if I would work that way with musicians instead of planning my own sounds. So I partnered with an electronic musician, and it was good for a while, but then I partnered with two friends, Kevin Nathaniel Hilton, who is sitting, you see my arrow right here, looking very young. Kevin was my student at Yale University, and he now lives in Brooklyn. And I see him quite often. And he was such a great student as an art student, but it changed to music afterwards. And this is another friend, Hassan Becker, from also another musician. They were both percussionists, and they would set up all their percussion tools. And you see me here playing my keyboard, which by then I had programmed on Windows to transform the keyboard into a piano kind of tool that did not play sound, but played moving images. And so we worked together. This performance, by the way, was in Damascus, this picture, at the Muna Atasi Gallery in 1997. It was in the early 90s that I finalized this program where the keyboard is transformed. And so we performed it together in Aleppo as well as Damascus, and then we performed it at Birzeit University in the West Bank, and then we performed at Darat al-Funun, this whole thing with Kevin and Hassan. So then the programming changed and the sound changed. So the sound now is music, and the program still exists on a poor little Toshiba laptop that I bought in the 90s. And this laptop is, you know, now nearly 20 years old. It's going to give up the soul. And I have to figure out how to get the program out of it. Because at that point in my life, I had stopped programming, frustrated with the different changes that companies were making and how hard it was to move from one part to another or do things. And I went back to painting, but that's good because at that point, since then, I produced some paintings on canvas that I think are important. So this is with the music of Kevin and Hassan and 3 other musicians. And this one, the performance took place recently. And this one is called Branching.
Samia, we have a request from someone. If you could increase your volume a tiny bit. I don't know if that's possible or not from your side. If possible, please do so.
I'll try.
There is towards the end of the, oh, there you go. Could you give me control of your mic? Hold on, I'm going to request control. Okay. طيب. Yeah, there you go.
Can you give me control so I can function?
Yalla, you have your control back.
I'm not, is it louder now?
Yes, it's louder. Thank you.
Too bad. Okay, do you want me to play this again or we're okay?
Maybe from the middle.
Was it louder?
Perfect.
This one is a piece called Brass Women, and I titled that way. It was first done during the time I was an activist, and I could hear lots of African American and Latino women lecturing, talking at demonstrations, and I loved how mouthy they were, if I may use a word that people think of as an insult, how bold and how assertive and how clear they were in their discussion. So this is a homage to African American and Latino. And bear in mind, these are clips, and you can see the whole piece, which is 6 or 7 minutes long, on YouTube, on my channel on YouTube. And the link to that channel is on my Instagram page. So this one is titled Jaffa. I was born in Jerusalem, but my father was an importer And he moved to Jaffa, and Jaffa was a great city. You know, just so proud of the connections it had. There were peers all over the world that were called Jaffa, and we had an amazing culture and a city culture of which Vera is a descendant of, an inheritor of, Vera Tamari, whose work is very special. And so this is my memory of my, school children in Jaffa. I know it doesn't show children. In the original one, I called out names of my childhood friends, but in this performance, it's different. There were 5 musicians at this performance. Oop, again, I made a mistake. And now I'm going to show you 3 stills. The program that I wrote for performing with the musicians that you've just seen clips from also could, I built into it a way in which I could freeze a frame and save it into a file as an image. So this is an image from from one of the performances called Brass Women. This is from the theme Brass Women. And in it, I had several shapes that kept growing, expanding, and contracting, and they covered each other. And the program I wrote in such a way that I could change the colors on the fly as I'm typing. And I had many things. The things that grow slowly are not photographed, they're not animation, they are on timers. That is, I write a function and I tell the computer every 5 seconds, draw another line and use this set of numbers to color it, and this set of numbers in an array to decide its size. So the computer, as an obedient servant, you know, it's not intelligent, it just does what I tell it. It's me who makes the mistakes. Then it draws the lines. If, let's be, it was here, it'll draw it one after the other. So you get this sensation of slow motion, but it is just adding lines. See also here, but it's using another palette, another set of colors. And this piece is from a program called Rain, and whenever I see the same program called Kinetic Painting, and when I work with Hassan and Kevin, we call ourselves the Kinetic Painting Group, and it is total impromptu. We practice a little bit, we know ideas ahead of time, we know where we have a city as a theme or rain. And then we just work together. And then when we perform, it's all unpredictable what will happen. And this, I'm shooting little lines and changing the color as I'm shooting them. And it creates the sensation of rain. And the rain slowly blurs what's behind it in shapes. And it looks like rain and rainy day. Purple rain. And this one is also from Rain. There are pebbles, things that look like stones. And those I actually went and got a pebble, several, and I drew the outline of the pebble and enlarged it onto graph paper, and then slowly, laboriously decided all of the vectors, all of the numbers around the edge, and then put them in an array And once they're in an array, I could make it bigger, smaller, change its color. But you see, it's not a geometric shape. It's a shape that is worn by, in a river, by water, and so on and so forth. And that is my kinetic artwork, which is fun. And now, Sultan, you asked me if I would show something of my political work. And so I didn't want to stress too much on it because we're in the mood of the kinetic painting. But in the world of my political art, one of the more polite pieces was done in the late 1960s. And I submitted it to Beirut as a poster for a poster competition. And you know, Beirut was class war at the time. But it was rejected, but with people that I worked with in the Palestine Aid Society, we eventually made t-shirts out of it and sold bundles. The most fun sale of t-shirts was one enthusiastic member of the committee was selling it on the corner of the street. And someone came by and said, I'm gonna buy a t-shirt for everyone in my sailing boat crew. I love this design. And he had no idea what the design said. and so, you know, we always laugh thinking there's a sailboat crew that's wearing Palestine t-shirts unknowingly. And what is special to me in this poster is you see Al-Quds here as the heart, the main city. And then you see Nablus, Riha, and so on, Gaza, long live Gaza, Yafa, Haifa, and in between woven is three of our Palestinian heroes. You see Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, and here you see Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini, and here you see Izz ad-Din al-Qassam, which some people may not know much about, but these were on our mind at the time, and I wove them into this piece, this calligraphic piece.
Actually, one of the guests here, Ghida Haddad, says she bought one from an ADC convention in Washington, D.C. in the late 1980s. So she has one of your t-shirts.
Yeah. Well, the t-shirt was copied by other groups besides ourselves. So long live the Palestine activist groups, all of them at all levels. So maybe she bought one of ours, maybe she bought another one, but I am so glad people have them. Then a friend of mine decided to redo it on actually Dia Batal in Beirut when she was younger in Beirut, did it again. So long live Palestine. May it be free sooner than later. So, I didn't mean to do that again. Samia, mistake here. Did I lose control of the, did you take control? I have one more, no?
No, you have full control of your screen and your mouse.
Okay, my computer's decided to go a little crazy. Here we go. And then finally, after the political poster, I want to show you other political work I've done. Drawing the Kafr Qasim massacre was a very, very important effort inspired by a friend from Kafr Qasim. So I worked very hard on this project, and it culminated in a book that was published in 2016. And this one was earlier. Liberation Art of Palestine was done in 2003. This is available on the internet, and it is being sold by Palestine Books. This is about my artwork, which is available from Ayyam Gallery, so is Growing Shape. But if you go into the internet and you can find these two books, Kafr Qasim and Liberation, the company Palestine Books selling Liberation has Growing Shape, can do Growing Shape as well. So, but let us know if you have trouble and you would like to look at any of those books. We'll try and make them available. But thank you very much, Sultan. I didn't start properly. I want to thank you for hosting me. It's really an honor to be part of this project you're doing. So I admire what you're doing, and a great deal. So all power to you. Continue with great strength.
Thank you so much, Samia. It's such an honor once again to have you. We have 183 people online, and many of them have sent questions. And so I will begin first by apologizing to Ghia Haddad. Her name is Ghia, because I misspelled her name. But maybe before I take questions, I'd like to invite one of the artists who is here, Miss Sitvera Tamari. Can I invite you to say a couple of words, because it's such an honor to have you? I will be unmuting you.
How do I? One moment. I don't know how to get back to the. I'm very bad in technology.
We can hear you now.
Should I?
You can hear me, okay. Hello, Samia. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Vera. How are you?
Hi, Samia, and thank you for mentioning that I came from Java. I'm honored. I love that piece. I remember very well, Samia, the time you did your presentation in at Birzeit University. We invited you and your percussionists to come and perform, and I remember it was a large auditorium with many students attending. It was a very revealing and very magical performance. I mean, everybody thought it was because computer, when was that? I can't remember, the 90s sometime, wasn't it?
97.
97. So I think it was an eye-opener, for, especially for the architecture students whom I was teaching then, and to see the genius of your work and the way you built up your program. It was very moving for all of us. And since then, you have become our favorite artist in Palestine, Samia.
You're my favorite, Vera. Thank you. That's so.
Thank you so much to Sit Vera. Sit Samia, I'll just go over a couple of questions that people sent us. I have a question from Ghala Al-Naqbi, who says, regarding your digital pieces, can you please explain the process of how you create the digital music? I understand that you use coding to do so, but is there any specific program that is used?
Do you want me to unshare the screen and just talk?
Sure. Yes, please.
I did not use anybody else's ready-made programs. No programs were used that were this, that, or the other. I was using the Amiga, and at that time, many of us who were using the Amiga in the 80s, the Amiga made it possible for us to get under the hood and program. And there was, and I had very little exchange with other programmers. So but at that time, there were also books available that explained how to do this, that, and the other. So you could follow instructions and then get started, then explore intuitively. But so I coded everything. I coded the sound. And the reason the sounds are so, in the Amiga pieces, please see a difference between the Amiga pieces and the pieces on the Windows. When I worked on the Windows in the 90s, the sound was musicians actually using not digital music, but using analog instruments. When I was on the Amiga, I was coding everything. So to the extent that I coded the timbre. So I created an array of numbers that decided the timbre of the sound. Then I had to code the entry into the sound and the departure from the sound. So because if you started at the loudness you wanted, then it would just pop and it would make a strange sound. So it all had to be carefully done within the code. And so that's what I did. It's entirely coded. And if I get back into programming, which would be fun again, I don't know that it would be so easy these days. I tried to get into programming the Apple, and it was like all about products. You had to deal with this, that, and the other product of Apple. The only thing they seem to be helping you with is to program for their products. And I just wanted to make a program for me, one I used, not to sell, not to share. Though I had some ideas, it would be fun to make an iPhone program where you just touched and all these functions would happen and make sounds and moving images like a kaleidoscope. But that I haven't had time.
Thank you, Samia. Samia, the next individual I will also unmute so that he can ask. It is a question from a writer, curator now at the Ashkenazi Museum of Art, which I believe is at the Indiana University. This is your alma mater, is that correct?
That's
so
true.
We have Elliot Reichardt. He was going to ask a question. I'll spotlight him.
Hi, Samia. It's so good to see you again. Thank you so much for putting this together. I just want to let you know, after our studio visit a few months back, I went back, searched our records, and found all your works in our collection. We have, I think, 5 or 6 paintings and a few works on paper that we purchased when you had left for Yale. And one of the oldest ones, I think, is the white cross abstraction is actually currently on view in the President's Hall at the university. So it's in a very prominent place, and I look forward to showing it in the museum again when we get working on our show together. It'll be such a wonderful homecoming. But I had seen a lot of your paintings and drawings, but obviously not as much of your digital work. And I'm just wondering how the programming cross-fertilized the painting and the drawing practices and how they informed each other, if at all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the fact is that they knit with each other completely. There were things that I learned from computing and being on the computer that were amazingly important to my work that I would not have had a concept of were it not for programming in the computer. One of them was the light that emanates from the computer and the brightness of the color influenced my color a great deal, in the sense that it told me your paintings are rather low key. Why not hype up the saturation, the level of color? And that was important. But another very important one was when there are times when I would, on the Amiga, made it possible to record what you were doing on the screen using S-video or some other, ordinary video, HSV. I've forgotten all the names, but not PAL, the other format. So I put a video recorder on, attach it to the computer, and I would draw and draw and draw and draw. And I wasn't saving anything, I would just draw. And I realized that as an artist, I have a wave motion that is like the wave motion of nature, the waves coming into the seashore, whatever wave motion we see, spring, summer, autumn, etc. All of the motions, day and night, of nature are in us, and that my creative process also had a wave motion. So I would paint, and it would almost be perfect. Samia, this is a beautiful one. Just one more stroke to really put the cherry on the chocolate sundae, and then it would be ruined. Every time I had to improve it, I would ruin it. And then I would ruin, and then I would lose my temper. What is this mess? Bam, 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 my intuitions would take over. And before I know it, it is vastly improved. And I'm saying, oh, wow, this is very interesting. Let's see what last stroke it needs to be good. So it go up and down, up and down. So I learned that about myself, and that's very important. The creative process is a very interesting one. We think we can define it, but it just keeps eluding us.
Thank you, Samia. Samia, there's a question from Sasha Krasnow, who is a lecturer of Islamic arts at the University of Michigan. And Sasha asked, from the earliest work you showed referencing Jerusalem City to your various residencies in Ohio, Hawaii, Michigan, New York, and other places, as well as your digital space on art on the computer, how has place informed and shaped your work and practice?
Place has played a strong part, and some places more than others. It depends on what hits you in the face, so to speak. When I moved to Hawaii, I couldn't believe the shapes of plants and seeds. And so I have several sketchbooks full of these wonderful seeds that grow in Hawaii. So the plant life of Hawaii really influenced me. Then after teaching in Hawaii, I moved back to the Midwest. And at first I thought, oh, I'm gonna find the Midwest very dull. But then I decided, no, it's just a more subtle color. And it has its own beauty. So I learned about, one day I was in Fort Wayne, and I saw a stand of oak trees in autumn, and I couldn't believe the variety of brown colors and how beautiful they were. I parked the car and stayed there for 15 minutes trying to memorize them. It ended up in a painting called Homes to the Shawnee, because I was on Shawnee land, and my political instincts said, Samia, you're a settler in this Midwestern country, and as a settler, pay homage to the real owners of the land. They don't think of themselves as owners, but I did a research, where is this stand of trees? And so I learned a lot about the Shawnee and the struggle they had with the US government. And so the pieces, you know, I'm getting a little bit away from it, but place influenced me in many different ways. New York influences me as well. There's pieces I've made with Ibrahim Ben Noor. We used to walk the streets of New York and gather garbage. And so I have a set of collages that are New York City garbage. They look very beautiful. You know, you find garbage on the streets. In fact, Madison found a squashed piece of metal, which one morning I found on my dining room table. So since coronavirus is here, I gave it a hefty soap bath.
Samia, actually, we had a lovely offer from one of the participants, Izzat Qubti, who I can connect you to later. He is a programmer. He's a son of one of your friends, Mazen Qubti, who says that he would love to help you make the idea of this an iPhone application a reality. So perhaps you can reach out later separately. But there is a question from Dia, who is a architecture student at the American University in Dubai. And I think you will be pleasantly surprised, because by the end of the question, I think you are embodying the answer. He says that Dia says, I think the work displayed would be transferred beautifully into fashion pieces. My question is, have you ever thought of using your art in fashion or collaborating with a fashion designer?
Well, no fashion designer has ever come, you know, why not? I know Huguette Caland used to work with a very well-known designer whose name escapes me, of course, but it's fun. The thing is, my mother used to tell me I start many projects and never complete some of them. And every time I complete a project, I'm very happy. Right now, I'm working on way too many. And it's just one more project that would be time consuming. I have ambitions, you know, I would love to do that with a designer if someone will do all the work. I don't have time to do it myself. But one of the ambitions I've had that I'm not sure I will live long enough to complete is my book, Liberation Art of Palestine. When I made it, I only had 64 pictures. Now I have hundreds and hundreds of pictures of paintings by Palestinian artists, and they should all be in a book. So I just want time to put that together, and I want to do a book about my work on paper. You know, this young architecture student just opened a can of worms of all the things I want to do.
Samia, but can you tell us about what you're wearing?
I'm wearing a sweater that I crocheted a long time ago, before I did the digital stuff, but you know, crocheting is very digital, and this sweater is like a painting all over. And when I close it, the two parts go together and make images. Sometimes when I crocheted, I thought my crocheting was in advance of my paintings. So this is one of my creations.
Samia, speaking of your paintings, would you mind lifting the screen a tiny bit and telling us about that work in the background?
This work is called Butterflies, Angels and Butterflies, not because that's how I came about doing it. That idea wasn't on my mind, but what was when I finished it, I decided, hey, it looks like there's an angel in the lower middle, where you think of it as a figure with wings falling down, and most of the parts look like wings. So butterflies, angels and butterflies ended up being the title. It's made with very large brush marks. I have brushes of all sizes. And this one is sort of almost this round and this long. And so that's how I worked it. Different sizes, different little round, big and little round brushes. Acrylic.
Samia, we've had a couple of people request a digital course online. Would you be open to teaching a digital art course online?
I'm so far away from programming right now. It would be hard for me to go back. I think there would be other people who would do that better than I, to be perfectly honest, because digital art covers a very wide area. One of the things that I insisted on doing, which is not typical of digital art, is I insisted and imposed on myself that I figure out what the nature is of the computer. And I remember thinking about it a great deal and trying to think right from the very base of how things are. I remember thinking, oh, I could flatten out a mountain side and in the mud make channels and allow a ball to go down and, you know, be decision. So it is really a programming. They're asking about programming. And the people who programmed are few, and but the most I can do to help in that respect is to sort of try and put together some references and maybe names of people whom I associated with. There were, for example, at the early stage of making computer art, there was a man called Roman Verasco who had taken one of those table plotters, and he, instead of the ink head that the manufacturer made, he would put a brush and dip it in paint and put the brush, and he had a program for what the brush would do. There were many ideas in the programming world, and many things I experimented with. I didn't understand the mathematical principles behind them. I did a program once. Am I going on too long?
That's okay.
I did a program once. I was playing with BASIC, where somehow or the other, you know, I said, okay, I want to imitate a seed and how a plant grows, and then other groups grow. I'd seen a set of flowers growing in the wild and how they are next to each other like a community that grows from one seed. So I made a little pixel and then a plan for the pixel to go around itself, etc. And it made some amazing results that I had not planned on. There was wood texture, there were stars. Actually, in the program that Lara put online for me in my Instagram, there was a program called ISIS, and ISIS stands for the International Society for something symmetry. They're a group of scientists who are concerned with symmetry, and once there was an artist, a musician who wanted me to do something for him, and we went to the Symmetry conference, and this came out of it. And so there are some things that surprise me. I know I'm programming something, but it must follow a mathematical principle, but I'm just doing an algorithm. Do this, then do that, then do this, and do that, and see what happens. So it's really hard to teach that. If students want to try and do this, they should try and learn programming basics and then experiment. And experimenting you can't teach. You can just tell people, be brave.
So Sami, I think we'll be going to a close in a few minutes. I just want to tell you that the chat bar has been very active. We've had Maya Samawi, who's from Ayyam Gallery, I believe, who is helping people with finding your books. We've had a few students who are offering to help you with programming, and it's really is very lively. So I just want to say thanks to everybody there who are asking questions. We have a bunch of journalists. We have a bunch of collectors. Mazen Qubti is here. I wonder if Mazen, if you would be interested in saying a few words, Mazen, since you are one of the most prominent collectors of Palestinian and Arab art. If it's okay with you, raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Is that okay? Okay. So I'd like to invite Mr. Mazen Qubti, a very important, prominent collector, to say maybe a few words about Samia's work. And we cannot see the book. I believe you're showing us the book. You need to lift it. Tfaddal, Ustaz Mazen.
You know, one thing I want to say, my grandson is next to me. His name also is Mazen. He is 5 years old, and he insisted that I'll show this book for children of Samia A Halaby, and to tell Samia that he loves this painting. And because it's the colors of Palestine. So really, Samia, thank you very much. I think you are influencing not our old generation, but also the generations coming. And here, the 5 years old is in love with your painting. Thank you really, really very much for this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank your grandson.
Thank you, Samia. Allah shukran.
Thank you so much. Sid Samia, we are now coming to a close. I am so grateful for your time. I think you, myself speaking for a legion of your fans around the world, about 280 who are tuned in now, send you our best regards, our love, our best wishes. Please stay safe, listen to Madison and to Lara, and look after yourself. And we can't wait to see you. We can't wait to host you here in Dubai or in Jerusalem or in whenever you visit the Middle East. We can't wait to see you. And thank you so much for everything, Samia. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. It really was lovely. I'm grateful.
Shukran, alf shukran.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.